All right, let's dive into this machine learning stuff. Looks like you've got a whole stack of articles, research notes, even some university lecture slides.
Wow, yeah, this is going to be a deep dive.
But by the time we're done, you're going to know the ins and outs of machine learning, how it works, and how it's being used right here in Indonesia.
Some seriously cool examples, too.
Okay, before we get too far ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
what exactly is machine learning? I mean, I know it involves computers learning, but how's that different from regular programming?
Good question. So, with normal programming, you're like giving the computer a super specific recipe, step by step, right?
Exactly.
But with machine learning, you're more like a coach, giving the computer examples and it's figuring out the patterns and rules on its own.
So instead of programming every single rule for, say, spotting spam emails, you can just show a machine learning algorithm a bunch of examples and it learns.
Exactly. And just like us, the more examples it sees, the better it gets at recognizing those spammy patterns.
That's pretty cool. I get it now. Okay, so I've heard there are different types of machine learning. What are those?
Yeah, there are three main types: supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning.
All right, let's start with supervised learning.
Okay, so imagine teaching a kid to identify animals, right? You show them a picture of a cat and say cat. Show them a dog, you say dog.
Makes sense.
Supervised learning is kind of like that. You give the algorithm data that's labeled. Like each piece of data has a tag saying what it is.
So the algorithm learns to connect the label with the data.
Exactly. So then it can predict the label for new data it hasn't seen before.
So if we wanted to predict if someone has heart disease, based on things like age and blood pressure, we'd feed the algorithm data from patients who we already know have heart disease, and it figures out the patterns.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. The algorithm learns the relationship between the inputs, like age and blood pressure, and the output, which is whether they have heart disease or not.
Makes sense. Okay, now how about unsupervised learning? How's that different?
Unsupervised learning is more like giving someone a giant jigsaw puzzle, but without the picture on the box. They have to figure out how the pieces go together just based on shapes and colors.
So like a total mess of puzzle pieces.
Exactly. It has to find patterns and structures in the data on its own.
Okay, I'm trying to picture that. Got a real-world example for this one.
Think about those. You might also like recommendations you see online, when you're shopping.
Oh yeah, for sure.
A lot of times, those are powered by unsupervised learning, grouping customers together who have similar buying habits, even though the algorithm doesn't know exactly what each group represents.
So it's basically saying, hey, these people all bought these three things, so they probably have similar tastes.
Right.
That's really smart. Okay, so we've got supervised and unsupervised. What about reinforcement learning? I think I remember that one has something to do with rewards, right?
Yeah, you got it. It's kind of like teaching a dog a trick with treats and praise. You don't tell the dog exactly what to do, you just reward it when it gets closer to doing the trick.
Like when you're training a dog to sit and you give it a treat every time it gets closer to the ground.
Exactly. With reinforcement learning, the algorithm interacts with an environment and it learns from trial and error.
So it gets rewards for good decisions and penalties for bad ones.
Yep. And over time, it figures out the best strategy to get the most rewards. Like self-driving cars use this to learn how to navigate, right?
Oh, yeah. I read about
They
it.
get positive feedback for staying on the road, keeping a safe distance, reaching the destination. And by trying things out, they learn to drive better.
It's wild how they can learn such complex stuff without being explicitly told how to do it. So each type of machine learning learns in its own unique way.
Right. And they're each good for different types of problems. Supervised for predictions when you have labeled data, unsupervised for finding hidden patterns, and reinforcement learning is perfect for when the algorithm needs to learn through doing stuff.
All right, now I'm super curious to hear about how all this is being used right here in Indonesia.
Oh, yeah.
Our source material mentioned some really cool real-world examples.
All right, let's get into it then.
But first, why don't we take a quick break and come back to hear about the exciting world of machine learning in action right here in Indonesia.
Sounds good. So, ready to see how machine learning is being used in Indonesia?
Yeah, definitely. That example of the Indonesian police using it to find suspects in the Aid Armando assault case was really interesting.
Right, using ML to analyze CCTV footage and do facial recognition. Pretty powerful stuff.
Definitely. And it's not just for law enforcement either. What about those electronic traffic ticketing systems? I know they're using machine learning too, right?
Yep, those systems are using ML to analyze images from traffic cameras, catch people speeding or running red lights.
So it's basically like having a digital traffic cop watching 24/7.
Exactly. And it helps to make the roads safer for everyone.
Okay, so we talked about keeping people safe on the roads, but what about using machine learning to keep people healthy? I read that some medical devices are using it to detect heart disease.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge area where machine learning is making a big difference. These devices can analyze ECG data, that's the electrical activity of your heart, to find patterns that could mean there's something wrong.
Wow. That's like having a virtual cardiologist monitoring your heart all the time. That's incredible. And it's not just in healthcare and public safety, though. Machine learning is also changing how we shop online, too.
You're talking about those personalized product recommendations again, right?
Exactly. It's like they know what I want before I even know it myself.
Well, it's not magic, it's machine learning. E-commerce platforms are using it to analyze your browsing history and what you've got in the past to suggest things you might like.
It's pretty effective, I have to admit.
Hmm.
And it's not just about suggesting products either. Machine learning is also being used to figure out what people are saying about companies online, right?
Yeah, social media sentiment analysis, it's a big deal.
So companies can use machine learning to track public opinion about their brands, products, even political stuff.
Exactly. It gives them a real-time understanding of how people are feeling.
Okay, so machine learning is already making a big impact here in Indonesia, but I think it's important to clear up some confusion. People often use the terms machine learning, artificial intelligence, and data mining interchangeably. Are they the same thing?
It's easy to get them mixed up. Think of AI as the big umbrella, the overall goal of creating intelligent machines.
Got it.
And machine learning is a tool to achieve AI. It allows computers to learn from data without being programmed step by step.
Okay, so AI is the goal, and machine learning is how we get there.
You got it. And then there's data mining. That's about finding hidden patterns and insights in data.
So data mining is like the detective work, and machine learning is what we do with those discoveries, right?
That's a great way to put it. And speaking of building things, our source material mentions some software that's used for machine learning. Visual Studio Code, Python Anaconda, even just regular web browsers.
I've definitely heard of those, but I don't really know what they do in terms of machine learning.
Well, things like Visual Studio Code and Python Anaconda give programmers the tools they need to build and test machine learning models.
So they're like the workshops where all the machine learning magic happens.
You could say that. And yeah, even web browsers are important because they give you access to online platforms with machine learning tools. Even people who aren't expert programmers can use them.
So it's becoming more accessible, which is great, but with all this power comes responsibility, right?
Yeah.
What are some things we should be thinking about as machine learning gets even more advanced?
That's a really important point. We need to be thinking about the impact it's going to have on society. There are some real benefits, but there are also challenges and ethical questions we need to address.
Like, what about jobs? If machines start doing jobs that humans used to do, what happens to those people?
It's a valid concern, but history shows that new technologies often create new jobs. The key is to make sure people have the chance to learn the skills they need for those new jobs.
So we need to focus on adapting and working together with machines rather than being afraid of them.
Absolutely. Machine learning can actually free us up to focus on more interesting and creative work. Like, imagine doctors being able to spend more time with patients because machine learning is helping with diagnosis and treatment plans.
That makes sense. It's about using technology to make our lives better, not just replacing us.
Exactly. And we also need to make sure machine learning is used ethically. That means using data that's diverse and representative to avoid bias and discrimination.
So it's not just about the tech itself, it's about how we use it.
It's a responsibility we all share. Researchers, developers, policymakers, everyone needs to be involved in shaping the future of machine learning.
Speaking of the future, are there any advancements in machine learning that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, one thing I'm really interested in is the development of algorithms that can learn from smaller data sets.
So instead of needing tons and tons of data, you could train a machine learning model with less data and still get good results.
Exactly, and that would make machine learning a lot more accessible.
That would be amazing. What else?
Oh, and also combining machine learning with other new technologies, like quantum computing and the Internet of Things.
Wow. I can only imagine what kind of amazing things we could do with that.
Right, like think about smart cities where everything runs smoothly thanks to machine learning and interconnected devices.
Okay, I officially can't wait for the future. But even now, machine learning is already having a big impact on our lives.
Definitely, from personalized recommendations to helping doctors diagnose diseases, it's already changing the world.
And it all boils down to the fact that machines can learn from data and get better over time.
That's what makes machine learning so powerful and so exciting. It's a game changer.
And it's incredible to see how it's being used right here in Indonesia.
From catching criminals to improving healthcare, Indonesia is at the forefront of applying machine learning to real-world problems.
And as the technology continues to evolve, I'm sure we'll see even more amazing applications come out of Indonesia.
We've definitely covered a lot today. We talked about the basics of machine learning, the different types, how it's being used here in Indonesia, and even some of the bigger ethical questions.
I think we've given you a solid understanding of this fascinating field.
And hopefully we've made you want to learn even more. There's a whole world of machine learning out there waiting to be explored.
Okay, before we wrap things up, I want to leave you with a question to think about. It's something to ponder as you continue your own journey into the world of machine learning.
It's a question that will help you consider the role machine learning plays in your life and the world around you.
So, here it is. As machine learning continues to grow and change, what are your hopes and worries? And what other amazing ways do you think it could be used in the future?
The possibilities are truly endless. We've barely scratched the surface, and we hope this deep dive has made you curious to dig deeper.
Yeah, it's really amazing to think about how much potential there is in machine learning,
Definitely a lot to be excited about, but we got to stay aware of the challenges too.
Totally. So as you keep learning about machine learning, think about what applications are most interesting to you. What are the things we need to be careful about?
These are conversations we need to keep having as this technology becomes more and more part of our lives.
Well, I think we've given you a good starting point with this deep dive.
Yeah, we talked about the types of machine learning, how it's being used right here in Indonesia, and even some of the big questions it raises for society.
So hopefully you're feeling ready to explore more on your own.
There's a ton of info out there. Find what interests you and dive in.
Whether you're into the technical side, the real-world stuff, or the ethics, there's something for everyone in machine learning.
And who knows, maybe you'll be the one creating the next big thing in machine learning.
Right? The future is wide open. So stay curious, keep learning, and thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of machine learning.